Hello, everybody. Dr. McVeary here. Just wanted to check in and do a quick little podcast and update on our course. We are now moving into our fourth module. And when you think about where we've gone so far in terms of developmental approaches to language arts, we started really talking about cracking the code and phonemic awareness and phonics. And then we moved into thinking about words themselves and then word study. And that's like when we think about that transition of vocabulary. Notice I didn't call it a vocabulary unit, I didn't call it a spelling unit. I'm big on this idea of word study because it really is that bridge for me between the kind of diagnostic and assessments and direct instruction that works so well when you're learning phonics and you're learning basic skills and even some word study elements in orthography, using suffixes and prefixes. Basics that can be taught. But you're also then bridging into vocabulary where we start to play with this idea that, content knowledge really does equal comprehension in those situations. And when you want to build up vocabulary, yes, you can do some explicit teaching of tier 2 vocabulary words, and you should. But at the same time, there's no diagnostic assessment or intervention we can do for vocabulary. It's based on background knowledge. And the more background knowledge you have, the easier it is to read. The easier it is to read, the more background knowledge you build. So you can get really stuck in that cycle. And that's why I think a lot of this focus on disciplinary literacies and academic vocabulary specifically is a huge goal. Now, as we're going into Module 4, now we're starting to talk about comprehension research and reading comprehension. Again, to me, reading comprehension isn't something that you're not going to be able to just do a reading comprehension intervention. We're talking about the relationship of background knowledge again, and we're talking about prior text and motivation. You give us. I remember one story. I had a reluctant reader, and I couldn't get him to read anything. Everybody's, it's such a low reader, such a low reader. I found an old book about the Cannonball Run, not the Dom DeLuise movie, although that's something everybody should see, but the actual Cannonball Run, which was started as a race by the founders of the Car and Driver magazine. And this was an adult level book, and the kid was a total gearhead in 6th grade. He ripped through it. So motivation influences comprehension. There's so many social elements that influences what we understand and the meaning that we take from a text. So as we think about what you have to accomplish in this module, things are slightly different. And I want to cover a couple topics today in this talk. Basically, the discussion director prompts, the online debate that will happen, and then scheduling 15-minute interviews with me about your final projects, and then finally, how we're going to set up the discussion director podcast. I was hoping they'd come in at the end of each module, but I didn't really help there on getting you guys to set them up. So we can set up a meeting time for me to meet with each of the discussion directors next week to go over when we will set up the podcast. And it'll run just like this. I will just do a Google Hangout in there and invite you both in. And then I'll make myself blank. And what I want you to talk about are a few things. A, summarize the major learnings. B, talk about some of the projects you like. And then C, some of the takeaways that you have for the class. Now, as we're moving into text and meaning making, things are slightly different. The readings, you're all reading Duke et al.'s Essential Elements to Fostering Reading Comprehension. Certification students, you're going to be reading Text Talks and the Benefits of Read Alouds. Read Alouds are actually hugely important to teaching comprehension if you've never done it before. What you have to do is, a lot of this stuff, when we talk about strategy, instruction, strategy exchange, this is all things good teachers do inside their heads, or good readers do inside their heads. So through the Think Alouds, you have to do what's happening in your head. You have to verbalize for your students. And Think Alouds are probably one of the best way to modeling different comprehension and strategy instructions. Now, we've already talked about the limitations of strategy instruction, when it's appropriate, when it's not appropriate, and that's covered in the readings, and also in the classroom stream. Master students, you're really reading JPG's Situated Language and Learning, which I think these chapters really get at expanding our notion of what constitutes meaning making, and thinking about the ways that schools can then bring these kinds of lessons into your classroom. Now, if you're a master's student, we have topics below, and we're going to actually do an online debate. So it's very important that you, and this can be through the stream, this can be through comments, but I want to see a lot more interaction amongst the students, citing work on each other. And we have the topic of should we level in books and should we be focusing on strategy instruction or content knowledge? And there's a lot of, you're going to have to find some additional research, and you're going to start to see that out there. I think a couple of blog posts have already come in, but I really want to start seeing you guys discussing each other and talk back to each other in your blog posts, not just in the stream. You have 2 blog posts that you're working on for this module, and if you want to integrate some of that into your debate, you could use your blog for that as well. And you can talk about, oh, well, Anna said this or Peter said that. So you might want to get into that a little bit more, but make sure you're justifying your claims with evidence based on the readings. Certification students, you're going to look for 3 videos of comprehension and strategy instruction, and look for the common components of a mini lesson. And we talk about the mini lesson. We're talking about how you explicitly define the learning goal, and then how you model that learning goal, and then how you provide guided practice and then independent practice with those same tools. And I will look for some PowerPoints that I can share with you where I go over the role of the mini lesson in terms of comprehension strategy instruction. But there's no real better way to understand it than to watch actual teachers do that in their classroom and critique and compare those lessons. All right, in terms of your final projects, by now you should start thinking about what you're going to do on your final project. But I do want to schedule a 15-minute meeting with each student next week. This will be over video conferencing. So I will send out a link with an email with a sign-up Genius link for you to book a time with me. In terms of the podcasting, same things. I will email each of the discussion directors, and we'll try to establish a common time. Granted, this might have to be at nighttime when my kids are in bed or your kids are in bed, where we can schedule about 15 minutes for you to do your summary podcast. So that's pretty much it for class. If you have any other questions, just let me know.